I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Radio. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the second book, Pursuing Truth, no other than Miss Karen Ann Bulluck.
Hey Daniel, how are you today? So great to be here and joining with you.
I'm fabulous, fabulous, Miss Karen. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, I am a former corporate executive. I spent 30 years in the corporate world, and then I decided that it was time for me to pursue some of my more creative, outlets. And so I left the corporate world. I started coaching, doing some executive coaching, and really what I really wanted to do is starting to write books. And so I've written 2 books in the series. The one that we're talking about specifically today is Pursuing Truth, which is book 2 of the Ascending Ladder series. And the books center around corporate life. So they don't kind of fit into sort of the normal genres, but they center around corporate life and a lot of the ethical and moral dilemmas that particularly leaders, but people face in the workplace.
Miss Karen Ann Bulluck, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. How does Pursuing Truth build on themes of integrity and leadership introduced in Discovering Power?
Well, Pursuing Truth actually talks a lot about Cheryl, who's the main character, trying to uncover the truth about some things that are going on in her workplace that don't seem like they're quite right. And so she's in the IT department, so she works with the programming teams, and one of her programmers comes to her with a little bit of I think there's something wrong in this database, and I can't quite figure out what it is. And it starts the whole investigation about, what is the truth, what's really going on, and ultimately who's doing it. So it's a little bit of a mystery around that. At the same time, it builds on the themes of integrity in workplace relationships. So in the first book, she and her husband are sort of in a rocky patch. And in the second book, that kind of spills over into his workplace relationships and then ultimately into hers. So there's a lot of trying to pursue what is integrity in workplace relationships. We talk about having work wives and work husbands sometimes, but sometimes those lines get a little blurred as to where they're supposed to be. So that's another theme in Pursuing Truth, trying to figure out what the truth is of his relationship with another woman in the workplace and how all that fits in with her relationship. So those are 2 of the themes that I explore in this book.
Spoilers, people, spoilers.
Well, it only sets it up. It doesn't tell you what exactly happens.
Yes. So can you describe how Cheryl evolves as a character from discovering power to pursuing truth?
Well, in Discovering Power, she's takes her first steps into leadership roles. So she's trying to figure out what that looks like. She's promoted and she moves into a higher level leadership role, and she has to explore what that's going to look like for her. In Pursuing Truth, she really has to face some truths about herself and understand herself in relationship to her husband and in relationship to, the people that she's working with. So she really evolves from one to the other in, continuing to grow and continuing to learn how to look at herself in the mirror, which I think is a very important thing for leaders to do.
What role does workplace mystery in Pursuing Truth play in driving the story tensions and Cheryl's growth?
Well, the workplace tension is huge. I mean, it really, the tension between trying to do an investigation and figuring out who's if there is something wrong, and then if there is, who's doing it, really drives a lot of tension, because she doesn't know who she can trust, and she doesn't know who's telling the truth, right? Which is why it becomes Pursuing Truth. So there's a lot of drama trying to figure out who are the players in this, and which players are the good guys and which players are the bad guys, because she really doesn't know. She doesn't know who she can trust, and she doesn't know who's telling the truth.
Yes. How did you approach weaving the theme of pursuing truth into Cheryl's professional and personal challenges?
Well, Cheryl has part of Cheryl's quest overall throughout the whole trilogy, which, the third book is still to come. I'm working on that now, which is really fun. But part of it is really her trying to figure out, how can I maintain my personal integrity in the face of all the pressure that we all get in the corporate world, but in the world in general, both personally and professionally. There's all this pressure to do what other people want. How does she maintain her personal integrity? And that kind of underlies all of the books and all of the exploration that she does in Pursuing Truth. How do I pursue a truth? And then what does that look like for my own personal integrity, are the kind of the questions that she asks.
Miss Karen, what challenges did you face in addressing gender dynamics and workplace conduct, especially women's treatment of one another in the book?
Well, it's hard because I don't want to stereotype. I mean, one of the things I've really tried to do is, stereotype and, making things very singular. And that's a struggle. That's a challenge to do. But it's one of the great things about writing fiction is that you can weave in different characters to tell different points of view. And that really helped me overcome some of the challenges in telling the story and trying to keep true to gender dynamics, but not make them too, stereotyped and too trope, right? You don't want to make them sound like they're just, this person is one dimensional. So part of it is trying to explore all the dimensions of a person, and having sometimes my characters do things that I don't expect them to do, that maybe even outside of what you would expect them to do in their characters. Cheryl certainly struggles. She's the first woman on the board of directors in her company. She's sort of breaking a glass ceiling. So she's trying to figure out how I bring my female talents and skills into this role, but I don't, without appearing weak, which is often something that women struggle with in the workplace.
Definitely. Miss Karen, how does Cheryl's conflict resolution approach in Pursuing Truth inspire readers to navigate their own workplace challenges?
Well, again, I think that telling things from different points of view, getting her husband's point of view, getting the other main character in Pursuing Truth's name is Alicia, getting Alicia's point of view, and then, of course, the other supporting characters. It gives people, I think, opportunities and explores possibilities. So it's not just here's the answer on a silver platter, which I hate to do because everybody's answers are different for themselves. But what I try to do is explore all the different possibilities in what Cheryl could possibly do or what the other characters could possibly do. And then even though Cheryl follows a path and has her own resolution, there's other perspectives. People can say, okay, well, maybe I would have done something differently, or I would have followed someone else's advice in the book. So what I really try to do is open up the world of possibilities in the books so that people can say, okay, there are ways to solve these problems in the workplace. And here are some different examples and different things that the characters are exploring. And hopefully be able to apply that to their own lives and to their own conflicts that they're having in the workplace or challenges.
Definitely. And how did you balance the intrigue of potential affair with maintaining a story that resonates with ethical and spiritual values?
Well, that was a challenge. I will definitely
Challenge
say that's a
indeed.
challenge. It's, I think one of the things that I really explore in that is there's some self delusion in the characters as they are navigating these workplace relationships, and they're telling themselves one thing, and the truth is actually something different. And I think that's one of the ways that I explore it, so that the people actually feel like they're being ethical, right? And it
Yes,
sort of looks like how we can be delusional sometimes about what we think is ethical that may not be. And I think it encourages us to expand our broaden our horizons as far as what is ethical, what isn't, and where those lines are, and how we can delude ourselves into thinking that I'm absolutely in the right here when maybe we're really not. So that's how I approach it, by looking at what the characters felt like they were doing in the situation, right or wrong, but what their motivations were, to try to help explain, hey, there's different things going on for all of us. We're not just one dimensional, and sometimes things that seem very black and white can get blurred pretty easily depending on what your perspective is and what's going on.
definitely. What's going on indeed? And Miss Karen, what techniques did you use to create a vivid descriptions and transport readers into Cheryl's world?
Well, I will say that my superpower as a writer is dialogue. I hear the dialogue of the characters. Usually how I write the books is, the dialogue comes first. The interaction between the characters and what they're saying to each other is really sort of the base of how I write the story. And then I can go back in and fill in, okay, where are they when they have this conversation, and put the context around the conversation to anchor it. But for me, I always start with the dialogue, because that's what I kind of hear the characters talking in my head, and I'm trying to capture the dialogue. And then I can go in and fill in sort of, okay, what's the story around the dialogue. So that's my technique. I don't know whether other writers do it that way or not. I don't know, but that's how everything for me always comes back to starting with the dialogue.
Dialogue indeed. And Miss Karen, how does pursuing truth explore the significance of women in executive roles as highlighted in reviews?
Well, one of the things that I truly believe as an executive, as a former executive, and from what I saw in the workplace, having balanced teams of men and women and people from different backgrounds. It's not just men and women, but different cultural backgrounds really enhances teams. And that's been proven in research, over and over again. But I know from my own experience that we need to take different perspectives and different points of view in. And Cheryl, as somebody who's breaking into the executive role, um, with people who, a lot of whom are used to it being only the guys, right? And so some of this exploring is, how does she act as a woman? Some of them want her just to be a clone of the guys, right? Rather than bringing her perspective into it. And it's important to me for people to be able to bring in their whole self and everything that they have to offer to the table, and not just be in quote unquote only business mode all the time. We like to think sometimes that we compartmentalize. Okay, we leave, our personal lives at home, and we're only this corporate identity when we're in the office, which of course is crazy because very few people can compartmentalize that well. And so I think that's one of the things that's really interesting in how she develops and what she learns is where she does, where some compartmentalization is important, because of course it is. But how do you balance compartmentalizing and then bringing your whole self and everything you have to offer to the table?
How would you balance, for sure? What feedback have you received from readers about Cheryl's journey and its relevance to their own lives?
Well, a lot of the women leaders that have read it said, wow, I can really see myself in this role. I I relate to Cheryl. I relate to the struggles that she's having. Maybe they're not exactly the same, but I see myself, or I see situations that I've been in that really resonate. So a lot of them have resonated, but even honestly, even male readers have resonated with it, because it's some of these experiences are universal. I mean, in Discovering Power, the first book, it starts out with her dealing with layoffs in the company. Well, that's a universal experience. And lots of people have faced that in their organizations. So one of the things she explores in that is, how are companies supposed to handle that in a way where she can feel good about herself and still have to go through that. So a lot of the situations that are in the books are situations either I experienced or situations that other people I know experienced. So they're real. I mean, it's based in reality. So anybody who's worked in a corporate environment can definitely see some of it. But even people that aren't in the corporate environment, it gives them a peek into it. And, it applies to business, big or small. It's not just all corporate.
Definitely. And Miss Karen, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, my short-term goal is to write book 3, which is going to be called Embracing Trust, to kind of round out the trilogy. And I would love to see that book and the trilogy continue to be successful. And longer term, I think I have some other genres and other types of fiction books that I would like to explore. So I don't know. We'll see where we go with this one, whether after book 3, Cheryl's story is complete, or whether there's more of her story. Don't know. But I think it's going to be complete, but I don't know that. And then, like I said, I have some ideas for other stories, maybe outside of the corporate world.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Karen, and looking forward for more empowering books, and good luck for your goals as well. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be an author like you?
Right. I mean, really, it comes down to
Right.
something simple. You sit down and write. Even if you start just writing a journal or writing poetry or writing something, but you have to start. And I think the biggest problem that people have in writing this book, they look at the blank page and they said, "Oh my God, what to write?" Well, you don't have, I think there's a quote from Anne Lamott in one of her books that talks about everybody has a shitty first draft. And a lot of us are afraid of that. I know I was a little bit. We tend to be perfectionists. Okay, what I put down the first time has to be great. Well, it doesn't. I'll tell you a little secret. Discovering Power, I actually rewrote. It was originally published as Ascending Ladders. And when I wrote Pursuing Truth was so much better than the original book that I went back and rewrote it, because I just felt like, okay, if somebody reads Pursuing Truth and then goes back and reads the first book, they're going to be like, what the heck happened? This is so you can rewrite, you can do a do-over. And that's always my message to people who think about want to write. If you have to rewrite it later, you can. There's nothing to stop you from rewriting it later, which is what I did with the first book. But you have to start writing. Whatever it is, just write.
No. Stop procrastinating, people. If you have the passion to write, and share to the world. And Miss Karen, can you please recommend a book or books that influence you, Goni?
Well, there's one I read recently, Martha Beck, The Way of Integrity, that really dovetails nicely with some of the stuff that goes into my novels. And it was very challenging to me and liberating, and I think kind of life changing. So I would really recommend Martha Beck's The Way of Integrity.
The Way of Integrity. Yeah. Thank you so much for that recommended book, Miss Karen. And how do you hope pursuing truth inspires readers to stand in their own truth in their personal and professional lives?
Well, I think a couple of things I've already touched on. First of all, I want them to see how easy it is to be self-delusional and how easy it is to tell stories to ourselves to make ourselves feel better that may not be the best stories to tell. The other thing that I like to inspire people with is really here are possibilities. Here's the way Cheryl decided to solve this problem. Here are the tools that she's using. Here are the tools that Alicia is using to grow. How can I maybe use some of those in my life? Because there are specific tools and things, actions that the characters take that people can actually lift out right out of the book and do them themselves. So there's actually some action items in the books that the characters do that people can emulate or do more research on.
Miss Karen, can you share an example of a scene in Pursuing Truth that showcase Cheryl's courage and integrity?
Well, it's a little bit of a give. It's a little bit of a spoiler alert. So I will warn your listeners that it's a little bit of a spoiler work. But at one point in the book, Cheryl confronts Alicia, who is her husband's, workplace friend, and they run into each other, and Cheryl has to decide how she's going to handle that situation. Here she is face to face with this woman who is sort of wreaking havoc with her marriage at that point. And what is she going to do? Is she going to just scream at her? Is she going to ignore her? Is she going to be nice to her? How is she going to handle it? And Cheryl definitely takes the high road. I'm not going to give it all away, but she takes the high road in this confrontation with Alicia. And in doing so, she creates the opportunity for a solution to some of the issues that are going on that are really win-win solutions for everyone, not just, a win-lose situation. And that's another thing I like to inspire people for. How can we create win-win situations? So instead of all this win-lose all the time. But Cheryl really follows through with her convictions and her integrity in this encounter with Alicia in a way that's very unexpected, but that opens the door to some really beautiful resolution and some really beautiful healing.
Miss Karen, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in 5th season, abstract poetry in 2nd season, and of course, my book 101 review in 5th season too, comedy 101 in 2nd season, and my food 101 in 5th season as well, geography 101 in 4th season, and my baby podcast law 101, and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in its 3rd season, and Book 101 Review and Music 101 in its 4th season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Karen, what can readers expect from the final book in this Ascending Ladder series, and how it will conclude Cheryl's story?
Well, Cheryl is there's some themes from Pursuing Truth that we're still unresolved at the end of Pursuing Truth. So there's the whole investigation. Some of that was resolved at the end. We figured out who the main bad guys were at the end of Pursuing Truth, but there's still some questions about some of the other characters, whether they were involved or not. So there's still an ongoing investigation with that. And she's obviously dealing with the fallout of what happened with that investigation. And she has to take her leadership to a new level. Plus, she's going to have some opportunities in embracing trust to take her leadership outside of her company, which is kind of exciting for her. And it gives her the opportunity to potentially influence more people.
Miss Karen, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. We are hoping for more and more empowering books like this, or more series to come for sure. So can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Absolutely. You can get the books on Amazon or on any other bookseller where you like to buy books. If you want to connect with me directly, LinkedIn is a great way to find me. That's where I'm most active on social media, but you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. And I would love, if you read the book, I would love to hear it. And I would love for you to write a review on Amazon for me.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Karen Ann Bulluck, because if you support her, for sure, as I said, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Karen, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me, Daniel. I've enjoyed our conversation, and good luck to you with all of your podcasts.
Thank you.
That's just awesome.
Thank you so much. So, Miss Karen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
More to come, people. See you soon.